took a look at how to render multiple choice, how to render true false. Let's take a look at rendering fill in the blanks. Okay. So for fill in the blanks, we need to be able to capture what are we going to render for after the description. We want to render kind of like a phrase where you have some text intermingled with some input fields, intermingled with some other text, intermingled with some other input fields, right? Kind of like a phrase where we have left out some of the words, right? And you're supposed to be able to deduce what the input is, what the answer is based on the text, right? So let's work on that. Now there's a couple ways that we could represent that, right? One of the easier way to represent it is as maybe perhaps as an array of text, where you might have phrase, variable, phrase, variable, phrase, variable, okay? And so this could be all pieces of text, text, then the name of the variable, then a text, and the name of the variable. And so this could be easily represented maybe as an array of strings, perhaps. That could be. Then you need to be able to distinguish, saying that, well, some of these strings are variables, and some of these strings are just little text. Okay, so how do you represent that? So I'm going to suggest perhaps something easy. If it's just a piece of text, then it'll be just rendered as text. But if it has a special character, perhaps starting with an asterisk or exclamation point or something, or maybe has an equal sign inside of it, then we'll interpret that as being a variable, right? A variable to be rendered as an input field, right? When we need to be able when the person submits the fill in the blanks, we need to be able to say, oh well, for the first input field, this is what they answered, and for the second input field, this is what they answered, and so on and so forth, right? We need to be able to create some kind of map of saying, for this variable, this is what they answer. For this variable, this is what they answer. We need to create that map. So we need to somehow send back to the client enough information for the browser to render these input fields, and then create this map of variables to send us back when it's submitted. Make sense? Okay. All right. So we do have a fill in the blank question apparently. Let's see what we have here. If we go to Mongo, let's see what question is this. Let's see. We can say db dot question dot find dot pretty, and let's see. We have here a fill in the blanks. Okay, and there it is. So notice that I went ahead and for this question, right? Fill in the blanks 1, 2, 3. Is that it? Is it? Yeah, it's this one. Fill in the blanks 1, 2, 3, and here's the description. I went ahead and created a blanks attribute. See that? I created a blanks attribute, and what I put in there is an array of strings. It's just a plain old array of strings. It's nothing special about it, and it's just string and then another string and another string. And now some of the strings, notice that it has an asterisk in front of it. See that? This is how we're going to distinguish on the client, right? When we render this, it says, "Ooh, does the string start with an asterisk?" If it does, I'll render it as an input field, right? If it doesn't start with an asterisk, I'll just render it as just plain text, right? Maybe with a span or something, right? And also notice that the string that has an asterisk has a particular format, right? And the format is some kind of variable name and some value. Okay, so the variable name we're going to use on the client side, so that as folks fill in those blanks, and when they submit the question, we'll be able to say, for the input field whose variable name was 1, this is what they answered, right? And for variable 2, this is what they answered. Okay, and so we'll create a map using these variable names on the client side, right? We'll create the map on the client side. And on the server side, we'll use this as a means of grading them, right? Grading says, okay, did they answer 2, 3, 4 for variable 1? Did they answer 3, 4, 5 for variable 2? Right, so we can use that on the server side for validation purposes. And we'll use these variable 1 and variable 2 to create the map on the client side. That make sense? Right? All right, so I went on and pushed these strings onto this fill in the blanks question, but it has no representation on our schema. Notice that it is not in the question schema, is it? I don't believe so. Here's my question schema. Notice that blanks is not available here. See that? Blanks is not available. We do have a question type. Question type is fill blanks, which is correct. Question type is fill blanks. That's one of the valid values for question type. That's correct. Choices, we don't have any choices. We would only have choices if this were a choice type of question, right? Which this one is not, which is okay, fine. Let's see what the client is getting so far. If we look at the question, the last question is the fill in the blanks, isn't it? Yeah, there it is. We have the blanks right there, right? That are making it to the client, right? But the client is not doing anything with it, right? It doesn't know what to do anything, right? So it just lives in the database. It's being read from the database, and is being streamed over to the client. So we need to handle this on the client. So let's handle these blanks. All right, so let's go to the client. This is on the server side. Let's go to the client. Let's see, what do we do when we render these questions? I believe we render that in quiz taker. Where's quiz taker? There it is. Here's quiz taker. In quiz taker, we parse the ID of the quiz, and then we go fetch that quiz using that ID, and we copy it locally on this quiz object. And then the quiz object, we then iterate over it in the HTML, right? So we go to the HTML, we're iterating over the quiz questions. There we go. That's where we're iterating over. And then depending on the question type, we render different types of questions. In this particular case, we're interested when the question type is fill in the blanks, and in that case, we render this one component. Yes? Right? Now, for now, this fill in blank component is not doing much. Right? It is receiving the question as a reference, as an input, right? But it's not doing much with it. Let's go to the HTML. It actually is not doing anything with it. Right? It's just it has still the boilerplate content. Right? What we need to do here is take those blanks, right, and iterate over them and generate input fields, right, plus all the text, right. So, for instance, let's iterate over those blanks, and the blanks are part of the question, right? Question.blanks. I believe that's what the server comes back. Yeah, the server in the question comes back with blanks, the description, the points, the question type, the title. We're not doing anything with these blanks. All right, so let's iterate over those blanks. Let's say, let's see, how could we iterate over them? We could iterate them with a UL. Well, we've done UL plenty, right? Let's iterate in a different way. Let's iterate with a span. Let's iterate with a span over all the blanks, right? So we're going to do ng4 for all the blank of blanks. So this is going to iterate over all the blanks in where? In question.blanks, right? And as it iterates, it's going to render here blank. There they are, right? We have there's a text over here. See that? It says text 234 asterisk variable 1 2 3 4 text 3 4 5 and then the variable 2 equal 3 4 5. So indeed we are able to iterate over it. Yes, but we want to replace, right? If it starts with an asterisk, we would like to render this as an input field as opposed to as the literal text. Okay, so we could do that. And what we could do is we would like to be able to treat these differently, right? If it doesn't start with an asterisk, then just a normal span, right? If it does start with an asterisk, then I'd like to render it as an input field. So kind of like a switch statement we need there, right? Depending on one way or another, right? So we could do that. So here we're iterating, and as we iterate, we need kind of like a switch statement. Say that does it start with an asterisk or does it not start with an asterisk, right? So we could have maybe two inner spans, right? Two inner spans, where we render one of the spans as the regular blank, just a regular blank, or we render an input field, something like that, right? Right now, notice that we are rendering both. We're rendering the text and the input field, the text and the input field, the text and the input field. We need to be able to say, well, one or the other, and that's going to be driven based on whether it starts with an asterisk or not, right? So what we could do is we could create a switch around this. We could say ng switch. ng switch. I think what was the ng switch. So ng switch. Okay, and that's going to be equal to let's see if we can find the asterisk in the string, right? And we could do that with index, right? Index of will say, is the asterisk a part of the string? And that will either return 0 if it's part of the string, right? If it's the first, if it's located at the beginning of the string, or -1 if it's not found in the text, right? So we could do the expression would be something like blank index of asterisk, right? And that's going to evaluate to either 0 or -1, correct? And then we could do something like, well, if it's equal to, if the case is that is equal to -1, meaning it's not, there is no asterisk, right? Then just render it as a normal content, right? Or, right? Otherwise, we could say ng switch case, case. If it's equal to 0, then I do want to render as an input field, right? Okay, and indeed that's what we have, right? We have text input field. You can barely see that, but it's there. Maybe we can make it a little bit darker. Can we make it a little bit darker? Let's see. We could say style, border, color, black. Is that enough? Yeah, I think that's enough, right? So we could style it real quick here in the input field. This input field, we can style, border, color, black. Okay, that's much better. We can see it. But nevertheless, you see how this is a phrase, right, where you have interchanging text and input fields. Okay? All right, so that's the first part. We know how to render it. The second part is that whenever we submit it, we need to be able to add our submission, the values that we added, that we actually typed when we click on submit. We need to be able to say, well, for this question, right, for variable one, this is the value that they answered, right? Perhaps we can use as a placeholder, we could give them a hint on what is it that we're expecting them to type there, right? So, for instance, one of the hints would be maybe the name of the variable, right? Username, first name, last name, kind of a hint. What is it that, not the value, we're not going to give out the value, but we give them a hint of what they, so how do we get a hold of the variable name? How do we get a hold of the variable name? Right, we know it's part of the blank. And the blank, if it's a variable, it's an asterisk, the name of the variable, equal, and then the actual value. Yes? All right, so how can we generate that? Well, this could be another expression. We could calculate that from the blank. Right, the way we could do that is well, we don't want anything after the equal sign. We're going to throw that away, including the equal sign. Throw that away. We're left over with asterisk and the name of the variable. Yes? And then we could maybe take that and just throw out the first character, and we're left off with the name of the variable. Yes? So let's play around with that. Let's see. We can take the blank. Maybe we could split it on the equal sign. What's that going to do? That's going to make an array. An array of two values, right? The first value will be the left-hand side of the equal sign, and the second element will be the second element of the equal on the array. Yes, on the right side of the equal sign. And so I only really care for the left-hand side. I don't care about the right-hand side. So this leaves me with the left-hand side of the equal. Plus, I don't want the asterisk. Right? I don't want the asterisk, so I can just replace it. I can replace the asterisk with nothing. Right, so that retrieves the name of the variable. That's the name of the variable. So for the placeholder, notice that indeed we have variable 1 and variable 2 as the placeholders. See that? Okay. Well, we can actually use the same exact technique, right, to bind this to bind these input fields to the answers, to a map, to create a map around this, right, so that when we submit it, we can have all the answers as part of this. Okay. So what we could do is in the component side. In the component side, we could initialize the question. We could initialize it with the answers, right? We can say this dot question. We could say, hey, I'm going to create a map where I'm going to capture all the answers that the student is going to submit, right? And I'm going to put it in the fill blanks answers, right? And I'll create an empty map. So I'm going to initialize an empty map in there, right? The question is being passed to me as an argument, right? It's being passed to me by reference from outside in the iteration. As it's iterating, it's passing me each one of the questions. If this is a fill in the blanks question, I'm adding a map to that question. All right, it's empty right now. Everybody okay? All right. So once I have that, I could say, okay, well, this input field, I can bind it. I can create an ng model. That binds it to the question, the map, right, which is fill. What's it called? Fill blanks answer. Dot. Okay. So I'm going to map the value of the input field. I'm going to put it in this map. Right. Where am I going to put it? What's going to be the key to the map? So this is the map. I need to make a key value pair. The value is whatever I'm going to type in the input field. Right? But the key, where I'm going to put it in the map, I need to tell it. I need to say, what key am I going to use? What am I going to put in there? Right? Well, I can use exactly what I did here. I'm going to use the name of the variable as the key. So I will end up with a map that says for variable 1, this is what you typed. And for variable 2, this is what you typed. Okay, so that it'll be a map. And I'll use the name of the variable as the key into this map. That make sense? All right. Let's see, did I miss something? What is it? Blank, blah, blah, blah. Question dot fill blanks answer. What don't you like? Expression expected. Blank. We are inside the blank. I think might be okay. All right, so let's see what happens here if I type something, right, and I actually submit, right? Notice if you remember from yesterday's implementation, the entire quiz was printed out to the console, right? It wasn't actually sent over to the server. It wasn't actually submitted. The entire quiz object, which includes all these questions, right, plus all the answers, it was being printed to the console. So let's submit and let's see what gets printed to the console. There it is, my questions. my object with all the questions, and I believe it's the last question. It's the last question. It's this one right here. And indeed, notice that my fill blanks answer map is there with the variable 1 and variable 2 as the keys to my map, plus all the values that I type, the dummy values that I type. Make sense? Right? So basically, I have enough information, right, to send over to the server and say, hey, this student, presumably somebody who's already logged in, for this particular question, these are the answers they answered for these variables, and I can then maybe automate I can automate the grading, and maybe do a pattern match and validate that the value of the variable was equal to the value of the variable that was expected. Right? I could do that on the server side. I guess I could do it here on the client. I could validate all of this on the client side. Typically, we would not send the actual answers over to the client side. Right? Probably we would leave this out. If you have somebody savvy enough to read the request, they say, I wonder how they're rendering this quiz, and wonder if they could parse out perhaps what the answer should be. So presumably we would only send to the client for rendering purposes enough to render the questions, but not the answers, right? And that all validation and all grading would be done on the server, right? So we would never compromise the validity of a quiz. That make sense? All right. So we have enough information to handle this. We'll send it over to the server. Let's now focus on a different type of questions that we still need to work on.